I am Tanya Richardson. I am the Therapeutic Strategy Head for Ophthalmology and Neuroscience here at Fortrea. And I am absolutely thrilled to be hosting this very important conversation. Together, today, we will explore how Latin America's unique healthcare landscape, the patient diversity, and site infrastructure are reshaping the future of ophthalmology trials, and how it offers a huge opportunity for global sponsors. So what I would love to start with is actually setting the scene for what we're referring to as Latin America. Of course, we're looking at Mexico, Argentina, Brazil, and Colombia, which is a very large population. So, Patricio, I would absolutely love to open the discussion and have you tell us why LATAM is such an attractive option for sponsors right now.
Thank you, Tanya. Thanks very much. So, as you mentioned, this is a very large area. If you look at the numbers of the populations between Brazil, Argentina, Colombia, and even adding Mexico, you have a population that is above the numbers that you have for the US. This means it's a large area. The US is also a large area, but you have a large population with great diversity as you would look for any of your clinical trials. There are differences between the countries regarding how much diversity you get racially wise, but all these countries are ready, set, they have experience, they have patient selection, so this is not easy. This is almost an open door for anybody wanting to come to Latin America to conduct a clinical trial. We have diverse conditions, we have geographic atrophy. There's a large European influence here in the whole region. So you get a lot of wet AMD. There's a lot of geographic atrophy, as I mentioned before. We do have, unfortunately, a lot of diabetic macular edema because of the amount of diabetics that we have. And there are several subpopulations if any of the study requires, for example, a study being done only on Asians, for example. So I would say you have a large area with differences maybe between the cities and the inner part of the country, but any of the cities where you would go for conducting a clinical trial, they would be exactly as being at any of the European cities, with great facilities, great transportation, easy access for the patients, the same technology we have at our sites and any of the sites in Argentina, and it's the same for Brazil and Colombia, the same technology that you get at any of the sites that you have in the US. So plenty of opportunity regarding space, regarding people, regarding diversity, and of course, regarding conducting studies within a well-developed part of the world.
Absolutely. And I know if one were to look at Sightline, we have actually seen since 2024, when you look just at Brazil and Argentina, they are among the top 5 countries that are attracting clinical trials from our sponsors. Leandro, one of the questions I also have is, looking at just the vast population within Brazil and knowing that it's the 7th largest economy in the world, the population being 213 million. So, Leandro, what does Brazil offer to clinical research?
When we talk about LATAM, we need to understand that we have many LATAMs. We could see Brazil as a whole continent, for example, because we are the 7th or 8th economy in the world. We are bigger than Europe in area, for example. We have 27 states with a huge diversity in social, economic difference, ethnical too. For example, we have a huge population of African American, but we have many colonies that come from Europe or even Japanese people. So we have a very mixed population, a huge diversity here in Brazil. So I think that we can offer top-notch facilities comparable to the North American facilities and European ones. And we have also diversity. And it's very easy to us do research with this population all over our huge area in Brazil because we have a very integrated system here. I think Brazil has a lot to offer.
Patricio, anything that you want to add regarding, looking at the diversity inclusion from patient population within Argentina, or even from your knowledge of Mexico and Colombia as well?
Yeah, in any of these countries, you can go for whichever population you want to. And the greatest thing is that many of them will be untreated, because one thing that we have on top of the amount of people is medical systems that are non-comparable to the Europeans that cover everything, or to the Americans that have very good cover insurance. So if you're looking at, for example, having naive treated, wet AMD patients never treated before, we have plenty of that. And we have been a great success with many sponsors, many clinical trials come down here because they know that you're going to find all the patients that they couldn't find elsewhere. It's very unusual to find untreated patients with wet AMD in Europe, for example, because the system covers for everything. In the US, you may find some because of limitations with some of the insurances and coverage, but there's so many competitive trials. While here you have good regulatory agencies in any of the three countries, maybe some small differences in time for startup, but once you go through that, the country is yours, the population is yours. So you can, once you organize your study to be conducted in the region, you activate your sites in different countries at different speed, but once you have that, all the patients are yours. And we have recruited many patients that were trailing behind in the US that couldn't manage to get the patients that they wanted, and we just filled it up in 2 months with good quality. If you're using Fortrea, for example, you have the local team in Fortrea taking care of everything exactly as if you were in any other country. So technology-wise, city-wise, population-wise, and you have the benefit of having lots of patients yet not being included in any of the clinical trials.
That really is leading into my next question. And so, Leandro, most of the time we are hearing from our sponsors when we're talking to them about our strategy and talking about utilizing Latin America. The sponsors are concerned around the regulations in the area, and specifically they comment on the slow startup timelines. And so I want really for you to be able to talk to the audience, how is that changing?
It's a very important point because we changed it a lot here in Brazil. Now we passed a new law regarding clinical trials, and it has much less bureaucracy. And the VISA, that's the agency that rules the authorization to do the clinical trials, they built a new area with very structured people to allow faster the beginning of these trials. So I think that we cut more than by the half of the time that we use it to have. It's much easier to make clinical trials here in Brazil, and we have high quality data, a high quality network, and a very fast regulatory framework. I think that I understand they're concerned. It's our concern too. That's why we asked the government to pass this new law to make the country friendly to this kind of clinical research, and they passed this new law. And with this new law, we are very, very assured that we can do much better and faster clinical trials that we use it to do. So everybody is trust us, bring us the clinical trials because we will be fast to approve them and to start with them.
Absolutely. You mentioned cutting the time down by approximately 50%. And when we're looking at Brazil, Mexico, Argentina, I know it's a range. It's anywhere from 22 to 28 weeks. I understand that Colombia is coming on board as well with faster startup times. That's looking more toward the end of the year. So, Patricio, from your perspective as well, what would you like for sponsors that are still evaluating, do I come to Latin America? What would you like for them to know? Because startup, that is the foundation of a study. And so we've got to get it off in a very solid manner and as quickly as possible to ensure that all of our sites have maximized recruitment months.
Great, Tanya. I mean, this is a very good point because the past is the only thing that is not great here. In the past, the regulatory times were like very slow, and many sponsors were, put off by the idea of having to wait maybe 6 months for approval. That doesn't seem to be the case anymore. Governments are very much interested in having clinical trials running in their countries. It's the same situation for Brazil as it is in Argentina. We are in constant communication with the government and our regulatory agencies to see how we can speed up and change the system, make it a streamlined, to maybe reach the point in which within a month, we may be able to activate. We have been very lucky with some studies, and we achieved point of maybe 7 weeks from submission to approval. Some studies a little bit more. It depends on how busy the regulatory agency is. But everything is looking towards reducing that time rather than extending that time. I know from conversations with sponsors that maybe some CROs that they don't have a dedicated team of ophthalmology. They take a longer time for site selection, while we have networks of sites here. So I can give you, for example, you let me know you want 20 sites in Argentina, and I can give you 20 specialized sites within hours. I can tell you the names, the addresses, what equipment they have, what is the track record they have, what sort of patients ideally they may be able to recruit. We can help them navigate the, sometimes more difficult in the past, a lot easier getting now to get through the approvals, reach that day in which we can start the recruitment of the study. But even if we take a little bit longer, in the US, within a month, you're up and running. Let's say we do an average of maybe 10 weeks here in the region. All that gets rewarded by the amount of patients that you get at the end of that. So if it is a study like, for example, diabetic macular edema or diabetic retinopathy, these are patients that can wait. So we know that the study is going to be activated in a month. We may have a pool of patients already selected, and you will see the boost as soon as you open the study, many of them being recruited, and you see your numbers going up. I'm sure that the future is going to be even better. We're constantly having conversations with the government saying, you need to move these, you need to create at least a fast track. Some studies, they're okay, they can, use 2 years for recruitment. So spending a few more months in starting up the sites, that's not bad. But we want, for some studies that are like 3 months recruitment, every second counts. So if we can manage to get, and that's the plan to have here, a sort of a fast track in which you can follow a study that is already running in the US under FDA in non-vulnerable population. We can manage to activate that within 4 to 6 weeks. That's the point that we're aiming for, and that will be an ideal. And that's our aim for the near future. Within 6 months, we should be at that point. So it's always getting better. The times are getting better.
Yeah.
Excellent. And as you said, it's time's critical because you want to get these patients treated. And at the end of the day, we're doing what we're doing for the patients.